The millionaire's son was losing weight every day. Until the black cleaner performed a miracle. "If I don't speak up now, this baby won't make it to Friday alive." That's what Ruth Thompson whispered to herself, clutching the cleaning cloth between her trembling fingers, when she realized that the millionaire's 8-month-old son was wasting away like a plant without water, and that his new girlfriend wouldn't let anyone near the crib for more than 2 minutes. Little William had lost almost 2 pounds in 3 weeks. His mother had died in a car accident when he was only 4 months old, and his father, Robert Sterling, owner of a chain of luxury hotels, had shown up with Victoria less than 6 weeks later, an international model who looked like she had stepped straight out of a fashion magazine. The baby cried weakly, his cheeks sunken, his arms thin as sticks. "Special imported formula," Victoria always explained, but it smelled like a lie to Ruth. And when the 45-year-old cleaning lady caught Jake, the private driver, hiding an unlabeled bottle behind the laundry cleaning products, she realized that the situation was much more sinister than she had imagined. She just didn't know yet that the plan also included eliminating any inconvenient witnesses. Ruth Thompson had been cleaning that mansion for 12 years. She started when she was still married, before her ex-husband left her and their 2 children for a younger woman. She knew every corner of that house, every routine, every poorly kept secret. She was the type who went unnoticed but observed everything, especially when something didn't add up. Every time Robert traveled for business meetings, Victoria would lock the baby's room and dismiss the official nanny. "I need some time alone with my stepson," she would say with that rehearsed smile. But Ruth noticed that Victoria would leave the room only 5 minutes later, leaving William alone for hours. The crying echoed through the hallways, but when Robert returned, he found everything in perfect order and Victoria playing the role of the devoted stepmother. It was while changing the trash in the room that Ruth found 3 bottles with traces of extremely diluted, almost transparent milk. "What kind of mother does that to a child?" she thought, instinctively putting one of the bottles in a plastic bag. In the mansion's garden, there were parties every week, champagne and loud laughter, but on the second floor, there was a heavy silence that made your blood run cold. Robert Sterling wasn't evil. He was a man devastated by grief and drowning in work. He lived in meetings signing million-dollar contracts, came home exhausted, trying to balance the role of grieving father with that of businessman of an empire that kept growing. Victoria, angel in appearance and demon in behavior, controlled everything related to the baby. Feeding schedules, doctor's visits, caregivers. Jake, the driver, was always whispering to her in dark corners, exchanging knowing glances and typing messages on his cell phone as if planning something. Ruth watched, took mental notes, and swallowed her anger. One night, when the baby regurgitated a gray liquid with a strange smell, she couldn't take it anymore. She picked up the bottle, smelled it, and knew right away, something was very wrong there. "What if I told you that it wasn't just the milk that was being tampered with?" That night, the mansion was buzzing with a dinner party for international investors. Photographers' flashes, waiters serving expensive cocktails, Victoria parading like a queen in her designer dress. Jake circulated around the party like a faithful shadow, always close by when she needed something. On the second floor, without adequate ventilation, William cried in a hoarse voice that broke her heart. Ruth sneaked upstairs, picked up the boy, and felt his fragile little body trembling. She went down to the kitchen, prepared a formula suitable for his age, without any strange mixtures, and gave him small sips. The boy grabbed the bottle as if it were the last thing in the world, his little eyes shining with relief. On the television in the living room, guests praised Victoria as an example of a modern woman who dedicates her life to her orphaned stepson. In the bedroom, reality bit deep. Ruth discreetly photographed the prepared bottles and the suspicious jar that Jake had left open on the counter. It was time to find out what was really going on in that house. The next morning, Ruth made a decision that would change everything. Either I save this child or I die trying. She asked for an hour off to get her blood pressure medicine, and ran to the health clinic where her cousin worked as a lab technician. She couldn't do a complete exam, but it was enough to hear a sentence that exploded in her chest like a bomb. "This milk is too diluted and has traces of infant sedative." Ruth returned to the mansion with her heart pounding and the certainty that she was dealing with something monstrous. At the gate, Jake looked at her with his usual fake smile. "You took a while today, huh?" She responded with courage she didn't know she had. "I went to pray for the health of everyone in this house." He laughed, but his eyes betrayed his nervousness. And when cowards get nervous, the plan accelerates. Robert announced that he would be traveling that same afternoon to sign a contract in Miami. Victoria feigned sadness, kissed the baby for exactly 2 minutes in front of his father, and then handed him over to a substitute nanny who came recommended by a highly reputable agency. Ruth immediately noticed that the new nanny didn't even know how to hold a child properly. "She just arrived today, she's temporary," Victoria explained hurriedly. "Temporary, my foot." Ruth saw Jake through the window cleaning the car with excessive zeal, and in the open glove compartment, a stack of brown envelopes and a cheap roadside motel keychain. What millionaire's driver carries souvenirs from a sleazy motel? Only someone whose head is elsewhere. And that elsewhere had a first and last name, Victoria Walsh. At night, with the house as quiet as a graveyard, Ruth made the discovery that would change everything. Victoria and Jake locked themselves in the private office. Low laughter, expensive perfume mixed with the smell of cheap cigarettes. Ruth pressed her ear against the door and heard every word that chilled her blood. "Not long now, love. When the will comes out and no one contests it, we'll be free. Tomorrow night, final dose to end this once and for all." If you're following this story and feeling your heart race like mine did when I discovered the truth, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what you're about to find out in the next few minutes about Victoria's diabolical plan will take your breath away. Ruth spent the whole night awake, going over every word she had heard. Final dose to end this once and for all. The phrase echoed in her head like an ambulance siren. She knew that tone. She had heard something similar 15 years ago, when her ex-husband was planning to abandon the family. The difference was that now it wasn't about a broken heart, but the life or death of an innocent child. The next morning, Ruth arrived at the mansion 2 hours earlier than usual. She needed to understand their schedule, map out their every move. Victoria came down for breakfast wearing a silk robe that cost more than Ruth's monthly salary, her hair perfectly styled even though she had just woken up. Jake was already in the kitchen, drinking coffee as if he were part of the family. "Good morning, Ruth," Victoria said with that fake smile that fooled no one. "Today you can focus on the first floor only. The baby is a little restless, so I'd rather no one go upstairs." Ruth nodded silently, but inside she was boiling. Restless? The boy was being slowly murdered, and the witch still had the nerve to make up excuses. As she wiped the living room table, she heard Jake whispering on the phone, "Yes, tonight. I already spoke to the doctor. She'll sign the death certificate without any problems. Sudden infant death syndrome, very common in premature babies." The cloth slipped from Ruth's hands. William wasn't premature. She remembered perfectly well when he was born, at full term. They had even bribed a doctor to forge the cause of death. Her stomach churned, but she managed to keep her composure. That's what 12 years of cleaning rich people's houses taught her, to be invisible even when your world is falling apart. Victoria approached the window and made a phone call. "Honey, I need to cancel lunch today. A delicate family situation, you understand." Pause. "Yes, very sad. Babies are so fragile." The syrupy tone made Ruth clench her fists until her nails dug into her palms. During the afternoon, Robert called from Miami Airport. Victoria answered on speakerphone, playing the perfect concerned stepmother. "Honey, William slept all day today. I think he's finally getting used to the new routine." Robert, on the other end, sounded relieved. "That's good, Vic. You're an angel in this boy's life. I'll be back early tomorrow." An angel. Ruth almost choked on her own saliva. If Robert knew that his angel was planning to kill his only remaining son, he would probably have a heart attack in the middle of the airport. At 3 p.m., Victoria left to get her nails done, in reality, to meet Jake somewhere away from prying eyes. She left Ruth alone with a substitute nanny, a nervous woman who could barely look anyone in the eye. It was the perfect opportunity. Ruth crept upstairs and found William awake in his crib, staring at the ceiling with those heartbreaking tired eyes. She picked him up and felt how much thinner he was than the day before. His ribs stood out under his pale skin, his little arms as thin as dry twigs. "Nothing will happen to you, no," she whispered, rocking him gently. "Aunt Ruth won't let it." That was when she found, hidden behind the dresser, a small bottle with a clear liquid and a medical label that made her blood run cold. Chlorpromazine, restricted use, only under strict medical prescription. Ruth photographed everything with trembling hands. She wasn't a doctor, but she knew that psychiatric medication was not something to be given to a baby. The sound of the front door made her run back to the first floor. Victoria had returned early, and from the tone of her voice on the phone, something had changed in the plans. "No, you idiot, it can't be tomorrow." Her husband came back earlier than expected. Pause. Then today. Better that way, less suspicious. Another pause. "The cleaning lady?" "What cleaning lady?" "She's practically part of the furniture, Jake. She's been cleaning this house for 12 years and has never said a word. She's perfect to be our innocent witness." Ruth felt her blood run cold. Innocent witness. They wanted her to witness the baby's death so she could confirm that it was natural causes. They wanted her to sign off on their version, to validate their lie. They were using her own social invisibility against her. But Victoria didn't know one thing about Ruth Thompson. She wasn't invisible by choice, it was a survival strategy. At age 12, when her alcoholic father disappeared from home, Ruth learned that observing in silence could be the difference between eating and starving. At 18, when she worked as a maid for the first time, she discovered that employers who underestimate their employees always slip up in their own arrogance. And at 30, when her ex-husband cheated on her thinking she was too dumb to find out, Ruth proved that a quiet woman is not a stupid woman. Not only did she discover the betrayal, but she also managed to keep the house, custody of the children, and even made the scoundrel pay double alimony for lying in the divorce proceedings. Victoria and Jake were making the same mistake as everyone else. They thought that because she was poor, black, and just a cleaning lady, she was automatically stupid and harmless. At 6 p.m., Victoria dismissed the substitute nanny and personally took over the care of William. Ruth pretended to be busy cleaning downstairs, but every fiber of her body was on high alert. Through the window, she saw Jake park his car in a position that blocked the view of the street from the main entrance. Victoria's phone rang. "Hello, Dr. Sandra?" "Yes, you can come now. It will be quick." The bribed doctor was on her way to sign the death certificate. Ruth glanced at her watch. 6:30 p.m. Robert wouldn't be back until the next morning. It was now or never. She climbed the stairs as quietly as possible and pressed her ear against the door of the baby's room. Victoria was humming softly, a macabre lullaby, as she prepared the last bottle of William's life. The bottle of chlorpromazine was open on the counter. Ruth took a deep breath and made the decision that would change everything. She took out her cell phone, activated the recording function, and slowly pushed the door open. "Sorry, Mrs. Victoria. I forgot to ask if you want me to wash the baby's clothes today." Victoria almost dropped the bottle. I told you not to come up today, Ruth. "I'm so sorry. It's just that the boss is coming back tomorrow and he likes everything organized." Ruth kept her tone submissive, but her eyes photographed every detail: the open bottle, the prepared bottle, Victoria's trembling hands. "Is everything okay?" Ruth asked, feigning innocence. "You seem nervous." Victoria forced a smile. "Just worried about William. He's very weak today." "Can I help with anything? I have experience with babies. I raised 2 children on my own." Victoria's gaze changed. For the first time, Ruth saw a flash of real nervousness in the woman's eyes. "No need. I can handle it." But Ruth didn't move. She stood there, blocking the door, forcing Victoria to act with a witness. And with each passing second, Victoria's mask slipped further. Sweat began to appear on her made-up forehead, her hands trembled slightly. That's when the doorbell rang. Dr. Sandra had arrived. Victoria looked at Ruth with an expression that mixed panic and anger, not knowing how to get rid of the innocent witness who had now become a problem. "Ruth," Victoria said in a controlled voice, "can you go downstairs and tell the doctor I'll be right down? And then, you can go home early today. You've done enough." Ruth nodded and went downstairs, but she didn't leave through the front door. She hid in the pantry with a direct view of the staircase, her cell phone recording every sound. What Victoria didn't know was that she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Every new humiliation, every condescending word, every order given as if Ruth were property only fueled a silent strength growing inside her, the strength of a woman who had already survived much worse storms and knew exactly how to turn others' underestimation into her own secret weapon. From the pantry, Ruth heard every word of the conversation between Victoria and Dr. Sandra Martinez. The doctor had arrived in a black BMW, wearing an impeccable lab coat over expensive clothes. She didn't look like someone who made emergency house calls. "Have you got everything ready?" asked the doctor, taking surgical gloves out of her bag. "The baby took the final dose 15 minutes ago," replied Victoria. "Jake timed it perfectly. By the time Robert arrives tomorrow morning, it will be too late." Ruth clutched her cell phone, recording every syllable. Her heart was beating so loudly that she feared it could be heard through the corridors of the silent mansion. "What about the cleaning lady?" asked the doctor. "Could she be a problem?" Victoria laughed dismissively. "Ruth? Please. The woman has been cleaning this house for 12 years and can barely form a complete sentence. She's perfect as a witness. She'll confirm that everything was normal when she left today." Witness. The word echoed in Ruth's mind like a punch. They really thought she was stupid enough to validate the murder of an innocent child. Dr. Sandra went upstairs to examine William, while Victoria remained in the living room with Jake, celebrating prematurely. Ruth slipped out the back door and ran to the house of her neighbor, Donna Carmen, a retired nurse who lived 3 blocks from the mansion. "Ruth? What a shock. What happened?" asked Carmen, opening the door and immediately noticing the despair on her friend's face. "Carmen, I need your help. It's life or death." Ruth showed her the bottle of chlorpromazine she had photographed. "Do you know this medicine?" Carmen took her cell phone and looked at the photo, frowning. "That's a heavy antipsychotic, Ruth. Why are you showing me this?" "They're giving it to my boss's baby. An 8-month-old baby." Carmen's face paled. "My God, that can cause respiratory arrest in children. It's attempted murder." Ruth told her everything: the diluted bottles, the conversation she had recorded, the corrupt doctor, the plan to fake sudden death. Carmen, who had worked in pediatric intensive care for 30 years, knew exactly how serious the situation was. "You need to call the police now," Carmen said, already picking up the phone. "It won't work," Ruth replied. "It's my word against that of a wealthy socialite and a trained doctor. Who do you think they'll believe?" Carmen thought for a moment. "Then we need irrefutable evidence." The two women looked at each other, and in that moment, an unlikely partnership was born. Carmen had medical knowledge and professional credibility. Ruth had access to the house and privileged information. Together, they could save William and destroy the diabolical plan. "I have a rapid test kit here at home," said Carmen. "If we can get a sample of the milk they're giving the baby, I can prove there are drugs in it." Ruth smiled for the first time in days. "I have 2 bottles stored in my purse." While Carmen tested the samples, Ruth organized all the evidence on her cell phone: photos of the bottle, recordings of conversations, videos of the bottles being prepared. Every piece of the puzzle was falling into place. "Positive for chlorpromazine," Carmen confirmed, showing the test results. "Very high concentration. It would kill a child in a few hours." Ruth took a deep breath. Now she had scientific proof, a credible witness, and documented evidence. But she still needed one more thing, to catch Victoria and Jake in the act. Carmen, do you know any reliable police officers? Someone who won't ignore this because of prejudice. My son-in-law works at the police station specializing in crimes against children. Detective Marcus Johnson. He's black. He understands how the system works. Ruth nodded. Call him. Tell him it's urgent, but don't give any details over the phone. Victoria may have contacts in the police force too. While Carmen made the call, Ruth planned her next move. She needed to get back to the mansion before anyone noticed her absence, but now she had something she didn't have before, a real plan for revenge. Back at the mansion, Ruth slipped in quietly through the back door. Dr. Sandra was still in the bedroom with William, pretending to perform a thorough medical examination to justify the time spent there. Victoria and Jake were chatting on the porch, wine glasses in hand, celebrating the future millionaire that would soon be a reality. Tomorrow, when Robert finds his son dead, I'll be here to comfort him, said Victoria. A few months of mourning, a discreet wedding, and all this fortune will be ours. What about the first wife's inheritance? Asked Jake. That's why we had to eliminate her too. The plan has always been this, to clear the way completely. Ruth almost dropped the bucket she was carrying. They had killed the first wife too. The car accident was no accident at all. Victoria was a serial killer who eliminated any obstacle between her and the money. Ruth's cell phone vibrated. Message from Carmen, Marcus is coming in 30 minutes. No siren, no uniform. Need more evidence. Ruth typed quickly, I have a recorded confession of double homicide. I'm on my way to catch an attempted murder in progress. She quietly went up to the second floor and found Dr. Sandra preparing a syringe with a clear liquid. William was in his crib, crying softly, clearly under the influence of the drug. Ready, murmured the doctor. An injection of air directly into the vein. It will simulate a natural embolism. No one will suspect anything. Ruth activated the video recording and opened the bedroom door. Doctor, can I help you with anything? Dr. Sandra almost dropped the syringe. What are you doing here? Mrs. Victoria asked me to check if you needed anything. Ruth kept her tone submissive, but positioned her cell phone to capture everything. I don't need anything. You can go. What about that syringe? Is it for the baby? The doctor broke out in a cold sweat. It's vitamins. To strengthen him. Ruth approached, forcing the doctor to back away. What kind of vitamin do you inject into the vein of an 8-month-old baby, doctor? The panic in Dr. Sandra's eyes was captured in high definition. Victoria appeared at the door, irritated. Ruth. I told you to leave. I just wanted to understand why the doctor is holding a syringe full of air pointed at the baby's vein. The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria and the doctor looked at each other, realizing they had been discovered by the dumb maid they had underestimated for years. You don't understand what you're seeing, Victoria tried, but her voice trembled. I understand that 2 murderers are trying to kill an innocent child, Ruth replied, abandoning her subservient tone for the first time. And I understand that you killed his mother too. Victoria's mask fell completely. Jake, she screamed. Heavy footsteps came up the stairs. Ruth held William in her lap, protecting him with her own body. I've already called the police. Detective Johnson is on his way. Victoria laughed nervously. The police? Ruth, dear, who do you think they're going to believe? A respected socialite and a medical doctor, or a black cleaning lady with a high school education? It was at that moment that Ruth smiled for the first time that night. I believe they'll believe the recordings, the photos, the toxicology reports, and the double murder confession I have here on my phone. Victoria's face changed. Arrogance gave way to pure panic. You You were recording? For the last 2 hours. Every word, every plan, every confession. Jake entered the room with a menacing expression, but stopped when he saw Ruth holding the baby. Shooting a woman with a child in her arms would be difficult to explain, even for them. Outside, cars parked silently on the street. Detective Johnson had arrived, but Ruth knew the real battle was just beginning. Victoria and Jake had connections, money, and influence. But Ruth had something more powerful: the documented truth and the determination of a woman who had been underestimated for the last time in her life. As the sirens finally sounded in the distance, Victoria looked at Ruth with pure hatred. "You have no idea who you're messing with." Ruth adjusted William in her arms and stared the killer straight in the face. "Actually, you're the ones who have no idea who you messed with." What Victoria and Jake didn't know was that Ruth Thompson hadn't spent 12 years cleaning the house just watching. She had studied every habit, mapped every secret, identified every weakness in that family. And now, all that information would become the most lethal weapons they could ever imagine facing. Detective Marcus Johnson entered the mansion quietly, accompanied by 2 officers specializing in crimes against children. Ruth came downstairs with William in her arms, discreetly handing over all the evidence she had collected: the flash drive with recordings, the photos of the chlorpromazine bottle, Carmen's toxicology reports, and the recorded confessions. "We have evidence of attempted murder and conspiracy," whispered Ruth. "The doctor is in the bedroom with a syringe full of air to simulate an embolism." Marcus nodded and signaled for the officers to surround the house. Victoria, who still believed she was in control of the situation, came down the stairs with her usual arrogant smile. "Officer, there has been some mistake. This is my house and this woman." "Mrs. Victoria Walsh," Marcus interrupted, showing his badge. "You are under arrest for attempted murder, criminal conspiracy, and the murder of Robert Sterling's first wife." Victoria's face changed. The mask of the perfect socialite cracked completely. "This is ridiculous. Are you going to believe a black cleaning lady over a respected member of society?" Marcus smiled coldly. "We'll believe the evidence." He showed her his cell phone with the recordings playing loudly. Victoria's voice echoed through the mansion. "When the will comes out and no one contests it, we'll be free. Final dose to end this once and for all." Victoria tried to run, but Jake was intercepted on the stairs by the officers. Dr. Sandra, still holding the deadly syringe, surrendered without resistance, crying and confessing everything in the hope of reducing her sentence. "This is a setup," Victoria shouted, handcuffed. "She manipulated everything. It's revenge from a resentful maid." Marcus showed the results of the toxicology tests. Chlorpromazine in lethal concentrations for babies. Fingerprints on the bottle. Bank transfers from your cell phone to the doctor's accounts. "Do you want more evidence, ma'am?" Victoria's arrogance collapsed like a house of cards. "You don't understand. I deserve this fortune. That woman died in the accident, and I—" "Are you confessing to participating in the murder of your first wife as well?" asked Marcus, recording every word. That's when Victoria realized she had dug her own grave. Jake, already in the police car, tried to put all the blame on her. "I was just the driver. She planned everything. She killed the first wife too." The doctor confirmed the whole scheme. The money, the fake medical certificates, the plan to kill William and stage a kidnapping blaming Ruth. Every detail of the conspiracy came to light like falling dominoes. Robert Sterling arrived from Miami on an emergency flight. He found the house surrounded by police, his girlfriend in handcuffs, and his son safe in the arms of the woman he had underestimated for 12 years. "Ruth," Robert said with tears in his eyes, "you saved my son. How can I thank you?" "By valuing the right people from the start," Ruth replied, settling William on her lap. "And remembering that those who truly care don't make a fuss." Reporters arrived within minutes. The news exploded. Socialite attempts to murder millionaire baby with help of corrupt doctor. Photos of Victoria in handcuffs splashed across the front pages. Her reputation, her influential contacts, her life of luxury, all came crashing down in one night. Victoria was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Jake got 25 years as an accomplice. Dr. Sandra lost her medical license and was banned from the profession forever. Ruth was promoted to William's official caregiver, with a salary that finally allowed her to give her own children a college education. The mansion she had cleaned in silence for years now echoed with her decisions about the child she had saved. But perhaps the sweetest revenge came when Victoria, from prison, watched Ruth being honored as Hero of the Year by the Child Protection Association on television. The woman she had treated as invisible furniture now had a name, a voice, and national recognition. What Victoria never understood was that underestimating someone based on skin color or social status does not diminish that person. It only reveals the smallness of the person doing the judging. 6 months later, Ruth was in the front row at her eldest son's medical school graduation, wearing a dress she had bought with her first paycheck as child safety coordinator for Robert Sterling's hospital chain. Victoria languished in prison, abandoned by her wealthy friends who discovered that association with a murderer did not go well with afternoon tea. Jake became a janitor at the same prison, an irony that Ruth knew and smiled at. Robert turned the mansion into a foster home for at-risk children, with Ruth as director. William, now 2 years old, ran through the hallways calling her Grandma Ruth. "You saved more than my family," Robert said at the inauguration. "You saved my soul." Ruth held William in her lap, watching the children play safely. Sometimes God uses those whom everyone ignores to do what no one expected. The invisible cleaning lady had become the visible guardian of dozens of lives. Victoria tried to destroy a child out of greed, but ended up creating a guardian angel for hundreds. The best revenge is not to bring down those who underestimate you, it's to rise so high that they have to break their necks to see you. Have you ever been underestimated by someone? Tell us in the comments how you reacted. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that true strength grows in silence and explodes at the right moment.